Hi, it's Jane Mann, and today we are going to be talking about fat. I have a special guest, Ivan Galanin, and he is a lead researcher, scientist studying the benefits of the fat cell, and he's really going to bring to light why we need to make friends with this cell, truly understand its benefit and its role in healthy skin aging. Ivan, thank you so much for joining me today. I have
Oh,
been
it's,
a fan of you. I have read a lot of the research that you have done. And so I'm really excited to introduce to my audience you and your explanation of the fat cell and fat.
that's great. That's great because no one knows fat. Really, no one thinks about fat. They think about fat only how much, right? How much fat. But no one thinks about, okay, is the fat healthy? What is it doing? What are the optimal ways that I can treat my fat? Fat is just completely ignored. And it's time we get to know our fat. It really is.
It is because, as a woman ages, we've all kind of seen the studies about the fat pads on the face. And I actually have a picture of this for those of you not familiar with the fat pads along the face. But as these start to thin and diminish, we start to absorb light and we start to see the real angles of the face, and we start to see loss of adhesion and a crepiness. And you're finding out that the fat actually plays a much bigger role in kind of the robust buoyancy of the skin that was ever realized.
That's right. So most people understand that fat contributes to the volume of the face, right? That's pretty intuitive, right? As we lose fat, the volume uh, decreases. What most people don't understand, and if you took 10 dermatologists and you asked them, what is the contribution of the dermal fat cell to the strength of the skin? You'd get 10 empty stares. I would bet on it. And that's upsetting because Shiseido has actually published incredibly elegant research showing that the fitness of the fat cell is the single most important parameter to explaining the strength of your skin. And people are going to say, wait, what? Fat cells determine the strength of your skin? Yes, absolutely. So Shiseido has been interested in fat for 20 years. Their head of R&D is really he's really the leader in the field of studying the importance of fat cells and facial aging. And they did a study where they took um, fibroblasts, and these are the skin cells that make the collagen, elastin, hyaluronic acid. They're the worker bees. They make all of the structural material. And they took the fibroblasts and they made them hang out with fat cells that were either fit or bloated. And they said, okay, well, what happens? So when you have the fibroblasts hanging out with the fit fat cells, they just keep producing collagen, elastin. When you put them together with the bloated fat cells, they completely shut down production and they die. So about 25% of them die off, and then the rest just like stop working. And so people are like, well, how does that happen? How does that happen? Do you want to know how it happens?
Yeah, I'm dying. Yeah,
so
definitely.
the fat cells, so the fat cells are huge communicators. Like everyone thinks about fat cells as being this like completely stoic, cell that all it does is like get bigger and smaller. The fat cells have incredible vocabularies. They produce like hundreds of hormones and hormones are just one of 9 classes of molecules that fat cells send out to their neighbors. And so when fat cells get bloated, they completely change the message that they send to the skin fibroblasts. Where before they were sending like, keep producing, keep producing, keep producing. All of a sudden they start sending molecules that say stop.
So
And
that's
the
when you start to
fibroblasts stop.
see the sagging skin and the crepey skin, and the fat loss can be due to direct loss, due to like a high frequency or high heat that so many people are just blasting their skin with today, with home devices and devices at the doctor's offices, but not to even mention dietary drugs that are promoting rapid fat loss and, eating disorders. So all of these can be said to be actually aging the skin, even though people do them under the initial quest to look younger.
Yeah, and here's the thing. The other thing, you know, I'm just gonna say this first. Exercise is great. I'm like pro exercise. But there is, there is a downside to exercise with respect to facial fat. And we've all seen it. Like if you've seen like hyper exercised men, especially, you think that their skin would just be stuck to their face like a latex glove, but it's not. It's hanging like a baggy suit.
Yeah.
Like if you see these like super exercise professionals that, doing YouTube videos about like, squats and how to do them, and they all have that same baggy suit face look. And that's because they have so few fat cells that the fibroblasts aren't getting, probably, this is conjecture, but it's probably that the fibroblasts aren't getting enough of that positive message. Make collagen, make collagen, make collagen, make elastin, because you see them. It's a standard look. Now, I'm not going to name any names, but look at like even movie stars who are, let's say, very fitness oriented, very haggard. So, so exercise, it's great if you do it, keep doing it because it's making you happy, but understand that it's also having an impact on aging your face that can be addressed, and we can talk about later the different modalities that can help regenerate the fat in the face. And I think that's really another important thing that I want your audience to understand, because people make it sound hopeless, right? We're
Yeah.
born with all the fat cells we're ever going to have, and we're never going to have any new ones. Not true. Not true at all. Like our fat cells, especially in the face, are constantly regenerating. And you know this because even in old people, if they take certain drugs that prevent the regeneration of the fat cells, they get a lot older. So even if you take an 85-year-old and that you give them a drug that stops the regeneration of the fat cells, they'll look a lot older, specifically in the area where that topical drug was applied. So that's how we know that this regeneration keeps going. It's always there. You never lose it. I mean, it gets harder, right?
Mm,
Just like when you get older, it's harder to build muscle, but you can still do it.
right.
So that's the really important thing. It's not hopeless. You don't have to run and get that injection. You can regenerate your fat cells really at any age.
So a couple of things keep lingering in my mind. You said something a little bit in the beginning of the interview about we had like tired or unhealthy fat cells, but we also have fit fat cells. Can you explain to me a fit fat cell and how we can we can all have them?
Well, yeah, I mean, we know very little about this because, as I say, people really don't study fat cell quality all that carefully. So basically, we know that small fat cells are good,
Mhm.
are better than big bloated fat cells. We know that exercised fat cells are better than non-exercised fat cells. They
Okay.
work, they work better. So there's this, when I first started getting into the field, I read the study that blew my mind. And the researchers created a genetically modified mouse, created an obese mouse that was so much larger than a normal mouse. Like, it's exactly what you would think of when someone said obese mouse.
Uh-huh.
That's what it looked like. But its fat cells were small. And so this obese mouse got no heart disease, no diabetes, no really sequelae, pathology from being obese. It lived a normal lifespan, right? No strokes. It could exercise as much as the lean mouse. So that told us, right, that, if you have fit fat cells, it doesn't matter if you have more fat tissue,
Right.
you're still going to be healthy. And so another study showed that exercise fat cells, even if they're the same size as fat cells from sedentary animals, behave differently. So exercise gives your fat a magical quality that we
Okay.
don't completely understand, except for that it improves the mitochondrial function of fat. So
Okay.
all cells have mitochondria. They're referred to as the power plant of the cell, and it's the part of the cell that basically creates energy for the cell to function.
Right.
And so exercise improves the mitochondrial quality in the fat cells, and they work better.
Right.
So so really, it's not fat per se, it's the fitness of fat. But we need a lot more research. So we know some other things. So we know that getting a good blood supply, right, is important for the fat cells to regenerate properly, right? And that makes sense, right? But really, very little research has gone into, okay, let's understand like what makes fat cells happy. So another thing that really hasn't been researched at all is that fat cells, they're not just floating, right? You think, okay, fat, like they're not just like, it's not just like a collection of marbles, right? Nest like collagen structures. So fat cells will make their own collagen and they'll create a nest for themselves. What in science we call a matrix. But
Okay.
it's like a hammock. It's like a hammock for the fat cells to hang out in, and it has an ideal tension.
Right.
We don't really know what that is, but we know that when we disturb it, right, uh, fat cells fail to proliferate properly, and that I think is part of the problem with fat injection. So, like, in some ways, plastic surgeons don't really think about fat cells either, right? They're like, fat is fat. It's like Play-Doh. Like, give me some fat. Let's make it nano fat. Let's make it in small pieces. Give me some nano fat and let me inject it. And now I inject the nano fat, and it's like injecting little eggs, right? Like, unless you like lay down the egg into the proper structure and proper nest-like structure, and don't just throw it in there and make sure it has a proper blood supply and the proper tension, it won't survive. And I think that's why so much of the fat grafts that are injected initially die off, because it's like, you know, fat, who
Right.
cares? Just throwing it in there. Some of it will grow back and some of it does. But no one has really figured out, like, all right, well, why?
Well, it almost makes me wonder, to be honest, when you're kind of giving this analogy, is it growing back, or is the body just unable to remove it? I mean, is it, you have such an efficient system through the lymphatics and the way the body removes certain things that don't belong. And you're kind of talking about this inner network or mesh that houses the fat cells in their perfect alignment of such. And when we disrupt that, I think of like caviar almost. And now we're
Exactly.
injecting this into the face. The body's somewhat efficient, but as we get older in our 40s and 50s, I always just kind of say that that, that little receptor that goes around trying to clean up all this, the things that don't belong in our system, just gets tired and goes, never mind, I'll do it another day. And maybe that's the success of the lingering fat that actually stays. But anyone that does get fat injections, many times that they're overfilled because they know about 70% of that
Is
will
going to
be
go. Yeah,
diminished.
it's going to. Yeah. No, I think you bring up a really good point, which is the relationship between fat and the lymphatic system. So, so fat is the ultimate. I mean, it's the most sophisticated garbage can in the world. Think of it. It's like super, super, super sophisticated, and it really needs to clean up lipids because lipids are toxic to most other cells.
Hmm.
Most other cells can't handle lipids. And so, what is lymph fluid? Lymph fluid is primarily comprised of lipids. And so, if the, as you say, if the lymphatic system gets tired, isn't functioning properly, that lymph fluid is hanging around, the fat cells, the dutiful, heroic fat cells, will come around and just gobble that up.
Hmm.
And and so that's why practices that you do like lymphatic massage are so valuable because they make it, they take that burden away from the fat cell and they're like, all right, we'll just help you get rid of some of this stuff, make your job easier.
No, I definitely can see that. I see that even with injections, where we were talking about kind of this netting of the fat cell, but now you have the fascial system. And fascia, has its own kind of inner matrix that keeps the cells organized and keeps blood flow optimally until it doesn't, because the fascia fuzz lays down. And if we're restricting movement or we're clenching our jaw or we're constantly looking at our phone, that fascia will grip the bone and hold things into place. So it's kind of like the more we do, the more we kind of disturb the natural body's way of maintaining its health and youthful appearance. So
Yeah, no, I think that's a really, really interesting area to investigate, which is if we talked about it, that we need blood flow, the fat cells need blood flow to regenerate properly. And if you have a dysregulated fascia that's, if I understand correctly, can inhibit that blood flow, does that have an effect on fat cell regeneration? And this is something you and I should study. We really should. We
yeah,
should really do some testing and see, like, I mean, I'm sure there'll be volunteers that would be happy to get just the lymphatic massage on one side of their face, and then we can see, like, okay, did the regeneration, the lymphatic massage? Yeah.
I want to talk about Adipo because it has been a game changer. In my industry, I'm really a pioneer and I'm known for the fascia. I'm known for microcurrent. And I always say, aging naturally is easy until you actually start aging. And as I hit, 58, I start to see changes in my skin and I start to see the crepiness. But your product really brought hope to me because and especially after this interview, I am so excited because the more I'm learning is the body has the tools and the abilities. It just needs to be turned on. And Adipo, your product, basically turns on through signaling and through ingredients the fat cell to get fit and to rejuvenate. And when I first heard of it, I thought it's too good to be true. And so I
Yeah,
ordered it.
no,
And I think I started
totally.
out with 20 bottles because I was like, but if it does work, I'm going to want some. So I did. And I just told, all of my clients, you have to try this. And they did. And I kid you not, I would be to dinner or I would see them at dinner and they looked really good. And in my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, did I do that? Or are they going somewhere else? And so, I kind of go up and I ask, wow, your skin looks great. What are you doing? And they're like, Jane, I'm only using the Adipo. That's it. I won't use anything else now. I come to bed, my face is covered with, the product. My husband wonders, what on earth am I doing as I'm laying there waiting for it to absorb? People are putting it on in the morning and then applying their makeup over it. But I have to say, out of every product as an esthetician for over 20 years, this product has everybody repurchasing, buying it at two at a time. Like the results are speaking for themselves. But I want to know, how on earth did you weren't just laying in bed one night thinking, I'm going to create a product that nourishes the fat cell. What is the process? How did Adipose come to fruition?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and the answer is so crazy that it'll be obviously true to everyone. So I had a skin condition that I'd been treating for a long time with a topical steroid, to the point where the my skin was so atrophied. Basically, any type of rubbing, any type of touching it would cause it to bleed. That's how bad it was. And so at one point, I just put on a cream that my wife had just to get some emollients. And after a couple of days, I was like, wait, my skin's not scratchy. It's not bleeding. It's not disturbed. And it was just a simple cream with an oil in it, an oil-based cream. And after a couple of weeks, I could see that the healing was really underway. And I started taking pictures. And in about 2 to 3 months, my skin was completely healed and didn't need any more cream. Just it it had recovered. It had restored itself. And I was really curious. I was like, what could this be? Um, and so that's for the first time I realized that the skin had its own unique fat cells. And so I used to be the head of commercial development at Mount Sinai School of Medicine. So I went to the head of dermatology and I said, Emma, what do you know about the skin's fat cells? And she said, Yvonne, I don't know anything. Like, what do they do? And that intrigued me because this is a superstar in dermatology. And I thought, all right, this is interesting. And so I started doing some testing with the original oil-based cream, and I got a 3D camera because I didn't want to lie to myself that something was working better than it was. I wanted to really see, right, is it working or not? And we did a small study in about 20 subjects, 22 subjects, and everyone gained volume, like everyone, except the two overweight subjects. They didn't gain any volume. But and that was interesting in the context of what we discussed before, which is basically what I think was happening with them is their fat cells were already bloated
Right.
to maximum. And so there was no more bloating to be done. But basically, what I learned was this cream was just bloating the fat cells.
So
Because
kind of would it be adding like triglycerides or adding some type of fluid to the fat cell that gives the fat cell this bloated look, which
ex-
probably 90% of the products on the market do to mimic tighter skin.
exactly, that's exactly right. So basically, oil is just filled with long chain fatty acids, which are converted into triglycerol by the fat cells. So basically, it's not so much stimulating new cells as it's making the existing ones bigger.
Okay.
And I thought, I did lie to myself. I was like, well, because I was using it on my face and I looked like a completely different person. I had big, heavy cheeks. And my daughter, who was 12 years old at the time, looked at me in the elevator and she said, Daddy, what have you been doing to your face? And like when an 11-year-old tells you that, it just hits you. And I thought to myself, you know what? This is not going to work.
So let me
Um,
ask you real quick, when you were saturating your face, were
yeah,
you doing it in the protocol that we do with the Adipo product? Were you already keen on the hair follicle and the kind of the passage to the epidermal fat or to the dermal fat?
I didn't really understand that completely yet. I really didn't. I was completely new at the time. Like I really was doing it in such a half-assed manner. And really, here's how half-assed it was. So at the time, Augustinus Bader had just launched, and it was like he had this complex, CX79-25. And I was like, I need a complex, right? If I'm ever gonna commercialize this, I can't just have an oil, right? It has to be a complex. So I spent one afternoon looking for exotic ingredients because that was the other thing that I learned from skincare industry. Everyone needed an exotic ingredient like Arctic white peony extract, right?
Yes,
I need
exactly.
I need something like that. So so I came up with a few ingredients and I sent them to the lab in Switzerland that I was using to make the samples. And they're like, well, these other three things we can't put in because it won't work, but you can put in the black ginger, you know, we can put in the black ginger. And it was great because it was Thai black ginger, very exotic. And if you look it up online, you'll see that it's used for male sexual enhancement. So I was like, on the exotic score, you can't do any better than that, right? So
Right.
like, so then they sent me the Thai black ginger laced samples, and I started putting it on my heavy cheeks, and I started only one, and then I started measuring with the 3D camera what happened. And after 3 weeks, that heaviness disappeared. And I was like, oh my God, what is going on? And so I went back to the scientific literature because my idea for it made scientific sense. So the idea was that the black ginger would increase the number of PPAR gamma receptors on
Okay.
pre-adipocytes. And PPAR gamma is the switch that when you hit it with the fatty acid from the oil, converts it into a mature adipocyte. And
Okay.
the black ginger was increasing the number of switches. So it
Hmm.
made sense, right? It made theoretically made sense. I could call it a complex and explain, the rationale. But I didn't understand why all the heaviness was going away. So when I went back to literature, I realized that I had missed the other half of the story, which is that the black ginger makes the mature fat cells smaller.
Okay.
So
So
that
it
was the
kind of
key.
it leans it out. It's kind of taking the fluff or the bloat of the cell and it's just compacting it down to now it's just an efficient unit of energy or, fat cell.
It's a fitter, it's a skinnier, fitter fat cell. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was how the product came about.
Of the bloated fat cell, we had talked about when the cell is bloated and ineffectively communicating with the fibroblasts to create collagen and elastin. This is how we develop the jowl, I'm imagining, so young, because
Exactly
we're
right.
breaking
It's
down this communication with this fiber or this fabric weave. And to people that aren't in the industry, collagen and elastin are basically like fabric. It's a tight weave that we keep everything in place. But when we take out a component or we take out the project manager, such as the fat cell, the communication breaks down, and so does the weaving. And we start to get jowls at a much younger age than we should, because this type of behavior should not be happening until well into your 70s.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So I knew nothing about jowls. So I said one day I'm gonna understand what jowling really is, right? Because
Jowling.
it's the ugliest word in skincare, the J word. So so I was like, all right, well, what is gel? And I realized that exactly what you said is right. That until your mid to late 70s, no one gets gels. No one gets real gels, which is a real gel is caused by the ligament in the jawline detaching. And
Right.
that doesn't happen until you're really old. And it doesn't actually happen to everyone. It happens only to a minority of older subjects. So basically, everything that all this droopiness here that people get, fake gels. It's fake. It's just weak skin.
And it's a bloated cell. So
Yeah,
theoretically, if one were to really focus on this, even though we're not, quote, focusing on the fat pad, but we are focusing on the health of the cell, which supports that you probably put the product all over the face and benefit. It doesn't have to just be where
y-
you want to develop fat.
yeah. So on the bottle, I think it actually says apply to areas that are either depleted or saggy.
Yeah,
So that's really all it is. It's like the saggy areas, it's just weak skin. It's just weak skin. And again, I owe all of this knowledge to Shiseido. Now I've had my own, like I've been following people now for 3 years. So I can see it. I see it happen. But Shiseido did an incredible study where they showed that almost all of the so-called jowling in the lower face can be explained by the size of the fat cells.
that's amazing.
Yeah,
Um,
it is. And they should get a lot of credit because they are really the most the most research oriented basic biology cosmetics company in the world. They really are.
I know we're running out a little bit of time, but I want to ask the question because I know there's so many people that were affected by thermage in the, late 90s and early 2000s. And so many people did do high heat type treatments that truly they were left, very gaunt, very shriveled, almost with there used to be a look back in 2000s when sculptor was really big, and it was that kind of the gaunting of the temple area and the protruding of the cheekbones and the shallowness of the cheek area, and they called it, and it was if you were affected with HIV, it was,
Yeah.
and so I know Sculptra did quite a bit of research on, helping, eliminate that look for the patient. But tell me a little bit about the research you've done with victims, or, people that have had fat loss due to cosmetic interventions.
Someone wrote me and said, I'm in this Facebook group of people whose faces have been damaged by lasers and high frequency uh, um, devices, radio frequency devices, and um, I've been using your product and I've had a really good result. And is it okay for me to talk about it in the Facebook group? And I said, of course it's okay. And then I made really a great decision, which is to completely stay out of it. Like
Yeah.
I've never even like opened up the Facebook group. I don't know what people are saying. It's theirs. It's their private world where they can discuss things without feeling that, some company is, eavesdropping or wanting to, you know, make people believe something that they shouldn't believe. And now I probably have close to 200 people from that group using the product. And they'll send me messages. Look, Yvonne, I'm so grateful. Your product gives me hope. And that's the best part of my job is working with people whose faces have been damaged. And I tell them, look, I've seen it. You're going to recover. You're going to recover completely because you won't need it anymore. Because your skin will be restored to its natural condition and it will take care of itself. So, and I've actually now started doing sort of free consultations because one person from Mexico, a young woman who is 31 years old, and she got a treatment and it just made her face swell up. And after the swelling subsided after a month and a half, she lost all this volume, and her face got saggy. So this is the telltale sign. You lose volume and you sag at the same time. And she said, Yvonne, I want to pay you for a consultation. I want your advice. I said, no way. This is a privilege and an honor to be able to talk to someone like you. And so we had a call, and I'm like, okay, here's what you need to do. You need to have a high protein diet because protein fuels regeneration.
Mm-hmm.
You need to have regular, moderate exercise. It can be 15 minutes a day if you space it out 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the midday. You don't have to exercise like crazy, but regular, moderate exercise. Lymphatic massage, like we were talking about, and derma rolling, not to puncture the skin, not to stimulate wound healing, but just to get the blood flow
Uh-huh.
up to the skin. And think about Adipo as a supplement to that core regimen that everyone should be doing. And yeah, so that's what I recommend. That's what I recommend.
Well, that's just sound advice. I mean, that's just a great way. And I love that you're studying the that you are studying and continue to study fat and its role in the communication system of, the whole skin system. It's huge because, we learn, well, and in some of my training out of Germany and New Zealand, you know, we learned in the very beginning, you never strip the skin. We're a very peel happy society. Everybody wants, an enzyme. Everybody wants a peel because they think that's going to make the skin glow. But what they have found is the cells on the stratum corneum actually aren't dead. They're the first line of defense. They are reporting back to the basal cell layer what elements, what the weather is like, what the wind is like, and they really serve as a protective barrier against aging. And now we are
And
learning
the
that,
messaging system, yeah, and a messaging system, yeah. It's the skin, the body is so much more complex than we give it credit for. I think that's the mistake we make as a scientific or as a medical community. We always assume things are as simple as our knowledge allows.
mm-hmm,
And we have to be comfortable with the fact that we have our knowledge, but the real story is far more complex. So
exactly.
let me tell you about some of the incredible things that I've been learning just by studying people. So the fat underneath the eyes,
Mm-hmm.
you'd think that it would come back in a uniform fashion, but it doesn't. It comes in from the side first.
Huh, interesting.
So yeah, so this has led me to form the hypothesis, and it's just a hypothesis, that fat needs fat to grow. Because we talked about, so one of the things I haven't mentioned is that fat cells are themselves adipogenic. They recruit other fat cells. And so if you don't have fat cells, you don't have fat cells recruiting other fat cells. So it's sort of like a vicious cycle. And when you start to get fat cells, they start to recruit other fat cells and they start doing the work. Your
Yeah.
own cells are doing the work. And what I think happens is that the loss is more extreme, like in this area
Mm-hmm.
where there's more of a cove formed by like the indentation under your eye
Right.
and the nose. There's like a little cove where the UV rays are bouncing around and the skin might be thinner. And so you may have more damage in this particular spot. Like you can feel the bone there much more
Yeah.
readily than if you go out. And so I think that the reason the fat builds up on the side of the eye first is because you've got fat cells to help you.
Right.
It's not the cream working on itself. And so like that, like there's nothing in the literature about that. There's nothing. So it's all like Terra Nova.
I um I love that. I'm going to show that before and after. It's not real clear. Um, but I'll show actually the group of girls. And this is who I was out to dinner with last night. And the outside girls are on the product, all of them except for me and my other friend are in their 60s. And the use of the product, especially the one up in the front, has created this youthful glow again. It creates this buoyancy that light reflects off of the skin, which is a subliminal kind of sign of youth. But I was so intrigued with it, I had to then look at mine. Now, this picture on the, I don't know if that's on the right or left, the before was taken at a wedding, and exactly what you're talking about, Ivan, in the kind of the growing of the fat cells from the outside to the inside. Look at the difference in my cheek area.
Yeah,
And this is about 6 months, of
yeah.
using the product. I use it very liberally. Like I like just cover my face with it, like I'm Santa plus. And I let it just sit on morning and night. And sometimes when I'm in the treatment room, if I know the person, I'll put it on them and I might have it and I'll still put it because I never wear makeup. I'll still put it on during the day. The product itself works, and there's so much more to be studying. I'm very excited to see um, its kind of communication role with the osteocyte. The jawline is known, or the mandible is known to absorb bone and remodel bone throughout our life, depending upon the tension of the muscle. So it's interesting if you're
That's
triggering.
so, that's such a cool idea. That's such a cool idea. Because who knows, like maybe that tension, right, of the skin being tight, maybe that helps, maybe that plays a role in bone formation somehow that we've never even thought about.
Well, what they have found, and I found this, it was a book, a dental book out of like the 30s, and I was led to it through one of my passions has always been Bite's influence on facial structure as we age. And we know that our teeth wear down. And as our teeth wear down, we have a closed off, our face kind of shrivels. When it shrivels, the bone is kind of alerted that it doesn't need to be as strong because things are collapsing down. But they found when they reopened the bite, this tension placed tension on the bone or the mandible, and then the osteocyte became active again. And
That
so,
that totally makes sense to me. That like
right,
I believe that so much because we
I'll
think of it
send
as
you the I'll send you a picture of the book when
yeah,
we're done.
no, no, I totally believe that because we think of this as like all like passive, systems, but they're not. They're so interconnected.
Exactly. And the body's meant to survive. And we truly are this amazing mechanism. And when you nourish it, just as what you were just kind of saying, a high protein diet, breaking up exercise so it's beneficial cardiovascularly, but not detrimental to where we're burning fat to fuel the movement. Um, and the less we do to change the body system, the more we can age just more gradually and naturally. I know I'm going to get asked. I'm kind of looking at our notes and we're running out of time. They can buy Adipo from adipogenic.com, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
And if they can use the code
Jane
Jane15, is
Jane 15. Yeah. That'll give them a 15% discount.
awesome. So I hope people take up on the code and using it, or ask your skincare provider if they don't carry it to look into this interview with Yvonne, with Yvonne, and inquire. Yvonne is very, very accessible. He's very generous with his knowledge and his time. If you're a skin therapist, 100% reach out to him. You can reach him on Instagram, send a private message. They will call you or get back to you. Um, I can't thank you enough for this interview. I look forward to seeing you personally in June in
Yeah,
Las Vegas.
Me too. This is just getting, we're just getting started, Jane. We're just getting started. And I think that you used an important word at the very beginning, hope.
Yeah.
Hope. That's our goal. Our goal is to really, is not to sell cream. Our goal is to give people hope and give them the tools, even without the cream, that they can use to take care of themselves. That's, that's our joint mission together. So I'm excited to have such a great ally like yourself in this battle because we need it. Because the industry really wants to make people feel like they have, that they have no choice, that they're powerless. And that's just not true.
Well, I could just have a whole other conversation with you on just that statement. You're absolutely right. And it's my
Let's do
mission
it.
in this
Let,
industry to really help women see it's more than skincare. It's more than calling me and asking for a vitamin A or a vitamin C. It's really about getting the system in order and optimally working, because that's going to keep you younger. And so much of that goes with, if you're doing something knowing that scientifically it's proven, you have more patience and you're not willing just to throw the baby out with the bathwater. You're kind of like, okay, you know what? Today I'm not really that happy with the way I look, but there's always tomorrow. There's always next month. And when you're doing things that actually are proven to work and not create just, a temporary change, you really can build daily for a younger you versus, trying to inject a younger you. Yvonne, thank you so much for this time. I know we're going to be having a second interview, maybe in a month or two. Maybe we'll do it live when I see you in June. I look forward to still sharing with you before and afters. And I look really forward to hearing the next research that you publish or share with me, because this is truly a game changer in our industry of beauty. If you can restore the filling of the face and the reflection of light through your own resources in your own fat cells, you are not only ahead of the game aesthetically, you're ahead of the game just in a more mature, self-loving, soulful way. So, Yvonne, thank you very, very much.
thank you, Jane. I'm really glad that fate brought us together.
Likewise.